Good morning, intrepid readers. Today is my blog from last week called The Mystery of Perception. So this is the blog from August 7th, 2016, and it's about the mystery of perception. So I think I've blogged about this before because I think it's so important. I think the more we understand that everybody about every issue sees the issue in a different way, and it has to do with so many things. It has to do with where they were born, or certain events in their life, or what their family situation is, or how they woke up that morning, or whether they had breakfast. When I was a teacher, it had to do with all of those things. The kids that didn't have breakfast reacted to issues in a different way than the kids who did have breakfast. The kids who got the crap beat out of them the night before, and I had my share of those, reacted in a different way to the most innocuous things that people would say or that I would say or do. And it's just such an issue. I mean, it's just so important. So I blogged about it again. Anyway, long story short, short story long, whatever. So this blog was inspired by my book club book that I just finished. I have book club tomorrow night, and that's what inspired the blog. The book is called The Husband's Secret by Liane Moriarty. And I wasn't too thrilled. So I guess this is going to be kind of a book review as well as a blog. So I wasn't that thrilled when this book was decided on for our book club because it sounded to me kind of like a romance, and I hate those. And anyway, so I wasn't that thrilled about it, but it turned out to be not anything like what I thought it would be, and that's my perception about romances. And again, I was wrong, so there you go. So anyway, the book is set in Australia, The Husband's Secret, and it follows these two women, Cecilia and Tess. And it also follows a bunch of people surrounding them, their husbands, their children, their mothers mothers-in-law and mothers and everything. But the point of view is primarily from Cecilia and Tess. And it's set in Australia. Did I mention that already? And so we'll just talk about those two women briefly. Cecilia is one of those super moms. Do you know the ones that I'm talking about? The ones that are always perfectly coiffed and dressed, and they have these well-behaved children, and they have cupcakes for every party, and they are organized in every way, and I can't even function around these moms because I'm the one that never remembers the appropriate school schedule and has mismatched children, and nary a cupcake in sight. So there's Cecilia. So I'm hearing from Cecilia's point of view, and I am impressed with just the accuracy of what goes on in her head, and of the author's ability to present what goes on in Cecilia's head, even though we're talking about perception. So what do I know from accuracy, right? It's my perception that Liane Moriarty is accurate about Cecilia's character. And just everything she said, like about the things that went on in her head, I was just so impressed. It was like, so Cecilia's this super mom, but inside of her head, she's a mess. She's a mess, right? We're all such a mess. It's like, it doesn't matter the outer presentation. There is stuff going on in here that, whoo! Okay, that's crazy. So Cecilia, and then Tess. Now, Tess perceived herself as having social anxiety, and just what she came to understand about that, and how I just really liked it. Okay, I really liked it. I don't want to do any more spoilers. I will say that this writer, I'll be reading everything she's written because I think she gets into people's heads very well and presents it that way very well. And The Husband's Secret, is also very interesting, and it was not what I expected, and didn't follow my perceptions at all, which meant it was a surprise, which means I love that. So anyway, that's on that note, The Husband's Secret, Liane Moriarty, totally thumbs up. I recommend it. Okay. I have a specific, on that note, I have a specific memory from high school about my friend Mike Pichata. Now, Mike and I grew up together. I knew him my whole life. We never really hung out in the same crowd, but he's a great, smart guy, and I remember him very well. I remember him fondly. But I remember this conversation that we had this one day. We're talking about, I don't remember what, and he's like, he looks at me and he's like, but you're rich. And I was like, what? And in my head, it went, exploded. I'm like the original scholarship kid in every way. My mom made all of our clothes until I was like 11. She was a stay-at-home mom. My dad owned a bookstore. We were, in my opinion, like the furthest thing from rich. Although I did have a car, a little ugly car, which is more than 99% of the rest of the world, right? So I realized by most standards we were rich. But by the standard of the community that I was living in, it was not an adjective I would ever have applied to myself at that time. Okay, and now I would apply it to myself just as being blessed and emotionally rich and having everything I ever could want. I would say that. But as far as finances, I still don't think it applies. We're still one teacher's salary, and it just was crazy. I just thought it was crazy. So, I don't know. I've never forgotten that comment because I felt it was so far from the truth from my perception of the truth. So when I was teaching, I taught speech class, and my favorite lesson was patterned after the communication model. And so, you have the message and then the feedback, and it's all this big circle. So this lesson was about communication interference. So you've got the message you're trying to send, and the interference is whatever alters the message. So it could be anything from noise in the background to the aforementioned getting the shit beat out of you the day before, to no breakfast, to just coming from a completely different political space or cultural space. And all those things are communication interference. So when we talked about that in my speech class, I would always say, all right, so we're going to do this activity. I want you to look at me right now. Pretend you've never seen me before. You don't know anything about me. You don't know I'm a teacher. You don't know anything about me. So you see me walking down the street. You've never seen me before. I look like I do right now. I'm wearing what I wear right now, which would have been some sort of floral sundress, I assume. I can't remember what the teaching, but just regular clothes. And so I'm walking down the street, and I want you to tell me what kind of things you think are true about me just by looking at me. And then I'd ask all these questions. What kind of car do I drive? What religion am I? What kind of music do I listen to? Do I have any tattoos? And on and on. Any kind of questions like that. And the answers were hysterical. Okay, generally speaking, I drive, according to me walking down the street, according to the kids, I look like I drive a really fancy car, an Audi or a BMW or something like that. And I attend, what church do I attend? Did I ask that question already? That's a question that I would ask. What church did I attend? And then you would say, oh, the Catholic Church or the Mormon Church. And then that's a whole another blog. But some sort of a mainstream church like that, usually. And what kind of a music did I listen to? Usually people would either say classical or classic rock. Those were the two answers that I got. So did I have any tattoos? Of course not. Of course I don't have any tattoos. I'm a waspy little white girl. So no, of course not. And so it was just the fun part was then, of course, answering to these answering to these assumptions that the kids made. I drive a true piece of garbage Honda Accord, old. To this day, I drive an old lady Honda Accord. I don't attend a church. I don't believe in organized religion at all. And this was a shocker to them, for sure. I listened to, at the time I started doing this exercise, I was kind of on my focus, was Metallica or maybe Rob Zombie or something heavy. I listened to heavy metal, but I also like Frank Sinatra and Chris Stapleton and Lady Gaga and Chris Botti and you name it. I like it all. I'm not a big fan of rap, but generally speaking, Justin Timberlake, love it. Meghan Trainor, all of that stuff. I love it all. So you can't assume anything about me when it comes to that. Oh, and I have 2 tattoos, which I did tell students just because I think that they should. I just thought the exercise made more sense when they knew the answers to the questions. But it was all, it was one of my favorite lessons. And I hope at least one kid along the road made his decision or her decision about what he or she was going to do, who he was going to hire, what direction she was going to go. I hope at least one kid made the decision with that lesson in mind. Like, is this based on something I assume, or is this based on something I know? Is this my perception, or is this really what's the story? And that's kind of where I hope it will go. Anyway, I don't want to give you any spoilers on the husband's secret, and I guess I just gave you some spoilers on my own self, right? With the so that's fine. It's a blog. That's what happens. So I just want to know. I'm curious to know what you think. I would love to hear your opinion. So until next time, stay mystified. I see, and then I look down, and then stop.